Welcome to the Trumpet of the Last Few Days. I'm Stanley Farrar.
And I'm Robert Farrar.
And I'm Joshua Farrar.
When we take and we look across the idiocy that would be called Washington politics, we have a vice president that has been the border czar for months. And when she hears that Trump is going to go down to the border and look things over, she rapidly heads to El Paso.
Which is not the border.
Oh, it is the border. But there's a border wall in El Paso. The
So it really is
crisis is
a
taking
callback to
place
its
where
old
I'm
name. Really is the
El
passage
Paso
to
del
the north.
Norte. Thing about it is she's
I gotta be
850
much
miles
about
from where
Texas.
they're taking just pouring over the border. And I can tell you right now, because I've been there numerous times, being I was born down there, er, the river isn't that deep, and it's not that wide,
Something about this topic is
so it's
making
not
your
that hard
accent
to
stick out
cross.
more than normal.
It's because he's talking about home.
But the thing is that she's not even close to where the problem is. So she's still avoiding the situation. And of course, the media's, oh, our almighty and powerful, horrible Harris was, may we sing your praises.
How long was she in El Paso? Like, what, a couple hours? Maybe? Even that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's about it. And then they
Enough
compared
to
it
really
to
get
the
snuffed down.
Ellis Island. The Ellis Island of the West.
Of the West?
Yeah.
The Ellis Island of the West is San Francisco.
No, because Ellis Island took and locked people up for coming into the country illegally, held them there in quarantine until they verified they had no diseases, and if they determined that they shouldn't be entering the country, they deported them.
Almost like what a functioning immigration system does. Interesting.
Yeah. Those New Yorkers and their open borders. It's almost like they only want the open borders when it's really far away from them.
Well, yeah, that's always been the way with the Democrats, except in California. But that's because they've learned that if you give the illegal aliens enough money and enough privileges greater than that of the American citizens, that they'll always vote for your party,
Well, it's kind of
even though
like
they're not supposed to have the right to vote at all.
an open door policy. If you ever have a boss who says he has an open door policy, he's lying to you. Open door policies do not exist. They are told to you that they exist to pacify you.
No, I've always had an open door policy with the churches.
It's not the same, and you know it.
I have an open door policy. There are times when I will leave my door open. Other times I won't.
If a pastor has an open door policy, That's understandable, but the pastor is not the congregation's boss.
No,
At best, he's a
that's
guide,
true.
not the boss. And I was very specific to say boss.
Oh, but when you take a look at the general notion of an open door policy in a country, that's suicide.
Oh yeah.
Because that lets people who want to conquer you in. And they've already caught enough terrorists coming in over the southern border. They know they're getting in. We don't know how many of them's gotten in, but we know they're getting in.
Well, you know, if they would just keep with the defund the police situation and that just spread across the U.S., it would handle itself. Because if there's no
Because the locals
police,
take
who's
up
going to
arms to
enforce?
stop it.
Exactly. However, the Democrats have decided, this whole defund the police stuff is really starting to hurt us. And we're not talking about the deaths. I mean, that's understandable. But politically here, politically, this is hurting us. So now the President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, has decided to endorse refunding the police. He has joined with the enemy. It's time. Somebody get the tar and feathers.
Oh, he didn't decide that. His handlers decided that. He hasn't got the intellect to decide anything for himself.
Well, yeah, but we can't tar and feather the handlers. We don't know who they are. We can tar and feather Biden.
Uh,
I say we
thing
as if
about it
we'd be doing
is
it, but
that
he's joined. They've joined our talking point.
the
Oh wait a minute. I just realized
the gun
an
violence.
issue. Um, that is
You
going
haven't
to
been
be
recording any of this, have you?
going to mess with the recording. In fact,
What
What
happened?
happened?
I didn't have our thing full screened. So the entire time we were talking, we had like my row of side servers brought up along the side.
Okay.
So should we begin again?
I mean, I could try to crop it, or I could just find a picture and stick it over it, and and do that, and then pop everything back into place once everything comes along. It'll make it slightly more difficult in editing, but not by much. I just have to time it up to this point. And on top of that, I can leave this little spiel in
Oh no.
there to let people know exactly why it's there. It's lazy editing 101. Lesson 2 of lazy editing:
I think.
cut out song intros. Saves you a lot of time. For anyone who's been watching the show long enough to notice that.
Well, on my sermons, I've added song intros. Uh, the have you noticed that for that the anti-gun party has since they have been in office, there has been more people shot in crowds than has happened in years.
It's almost like when you remove people's defenses, the psychopaths come out to play. Where fear
Yeah,
kept them in check earlier.
they took all these BLM types went out to riot and carry on for the June 18th celebration.
Of course, they take something perfectly
And the
reasonable and
black,
find an excuse to riot with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so the gangs shoot up the Juneteenth
The irony.
crowds. Yeah.
And then again,
And then when
the gangs are technically protecting their territory, and they're saving a lot of property damage. So this might be controversial, but I'm on the gang side. That
but the
is a
ambulance show
militia
up.
right there, that is protecting their homes.
The ambulance show up, pack up the wounded, and the women gather around the ambulance twerking and don't let it move. They even get up on top of it.
Morons. Oh, Robert, the contrast on your video right now is really high. I can barely see your face. It's like a super silhouette.
Yeah. How's that?
Better.
On my screen, it looks
He's trying
normal
to be
now.
anonymous. He's trying to be anonymous. He doesn't
Okay.
want the Democrats to know who he is, so they can hunt him down like a dog
He doesn't have a
for
Don Quixote
daring
mask.
to defy. After all, he's daring to defy his masters. You know, that's actually how they view themselves, though.
Well, yeah.
They do view themselves as the master, and the rest of us as slaves. But the Democrats were always fond of slavery.
Well, since the beginning.
When we take and we look at the violent spikes, Portland is still tearing itself apart, even after all this time.
No, they have no riot squad. Things are only going to get worse.
That's true. Now you're talking about positive things. The Antifa types went out rioting in Portland, as they've been doing for over a year, and the Proud Boys went out and met them. They had a big fight, and no riot squad to go break it up.
Who won?
I didn't hear. But probably the Proud Boys, being that the news media was horrified that the police didn't act.
How
Well-
dare they not act? We defunded them and they still aren't doing their jobs.
Without groups like riot squads to make to act as the mediator, this whole civil war thing we've been predicting for the past year is only going to accelerate. And situations like
Unless they
this
refund the
are the
police.
precursor of it.
Well, except for one thing, though. The riot squad didn't quit because the police had been defunded. They quit for other reasons. They quit because one of the Portland officers got indicted.
That's
And
not
until
what
they stop that, that's going to keep happening.
that doesn't. That's not the point that I was getting at, though. Regardless of the reason why the riot squad doesn't exist, it doesn't matter. The fact is that the mediator is gone, and aggression and
Yeah, well, no, I know that.
tensions are still building.
I was correcting myself.
Oh, okay.
Well, when it comes down to it, they're defunding the police all over the country, and murder rates are going through the roof. And they've noticed suddenly that the murder rates in Republican-controlled areas are declining, while the murder rates in Democrat-controlled areas are increasing. So they've come out and said that the problem with Republican leadership is they're not getting into the police reform the way they should. They are holding on to this old, antiquated view of things
That's working.
and are not taking and getting on the bandwagon. Right.
Once they start showing results, then maybe they can start. Then maybe they'll have a leg to stand on. But until then,
They are showing results. Murder rates are up 450% in Portland. Murder rates are up almost over 100% in New York. Murder rates are not even being counted in Chicago.
I would
They're
argue
so
with your
high.
definitions there, Dad. They are showing consequences, not results.
Well, if your mission is to wipe out a specific group of people, then the way they're doing it works perfectly.
Yeah.
So they're a bunch of races.
Yeah, but we knew that all.
But they
Just
always
think
have been.
about it. What's the number one? Yeah, the number one group of people who are getting wiped out here are blacks.
Now, the head general of the army this past week was before Congress trying to justify critical race theory. Which is open, unmitigated racism.
Yes, bring us back to the 1930s and 40s.
Oh, no, no, no. 1890s.
Well, not, but this is the military here. The military pretty well hit its peak of racism in the 1930s and 40s.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
But,
Come on, the 1890s the military hadn't been that that racist. For so, even in the Civil War, the military wasn't that racist. But in the 1930s and 40s, it was so bad that any black person who wanted to participate in World War II had to be stripped of their rank and go down to private.
yeah. The thing about it is the critical race theory is being banned in some states, mostly red states, and the federal government's screaming that you can't do that, you cannot take and remove our racism. They're all in the name of equality.
No,
Not
no, sorry.
equality.
Equality is an
Equity.
outdated term. It's equity.
Equity.
As if those don't mean the same thing.
They don't mean the same thing.
Equity
How are
is
they
where you take and, well,
Let's put it this way, right?
equal
So,
you take and
You've got
treat
two
everybody the
people
same.
at a theme park. One person is 5'5". The other person is one person's 5'6". The other person is 4'5". They are at a ride that says that only people 5 feet and over can ride the ride. Equality, theoretically, is either adjusting the ride for both of them to ride, or to lower the requirement in this particular case. Equity would be cutting the guy who's 5'6" off at the knees so that he can't ride the ride either.
But that would just be making them equal, so what's the difference?
The difference is the difference in equality is you treat everyone equally, even regardless of their advantages and disadvantages. You don't change standards, you don't do anything. You just treat them as equals. Equity is you cut the
So here's
you
the thing.
is you limit the entire populace to the lowest common denominator, and you force everyone to become literally equal.
The lowest common denominator.
Here's the issue, is that historically equity and equality have meant the same thing. It wasn't until the radical communists got a hold of the terms and needed to change their talking points that it changed.
Well, it's been argued that God treats us equitably, not equally. Because he deals with us where we are, with our strengths and weaknesses.
Another point to say, equality is giving everyone the exact same opportunities. Equity is giving unto one's need. That's the talking point.
Yes, but that's traditional equity. That's not communist equity.
Communist equity doesn't give anyone anything. They take from everyone.
I know. It only takes. It doesn't give. It doesn't.
Which is why I used the cutting someone off at the knees analogy.
Yeah.
That's communist equity.
Well, the equity.
But even so, communist equality is the same way. So it's
communists don't believe
when you
in
look
equality.
at it from the point of the communist perspective, equality and equity. Equality is the old term, equity is the new term. They mean the same thing.
From the communist perspective, yes. When it comes down to
remember that égalité was a French Revolution talking point. And égalité is just French for equality. Ha! And what they do, they chopped everyone at the knees. Brought them all down.
When you look at how our government has been giving out aid, and recently the courts took and stated that it was unconstitutional the way they were giving out aid, because they were giving it out to people on basis of skin colors, gender, sexual preference, that sort of thing, rather than giving it out equally. So they were violating,
which is a violation of the U.S.
law.
Yeah.
Yes. But they were working off the communists' equity concept.
The standpoint of from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Talking point.
And the court said, no, can't do that. It's illegal.
But, because it's an assumption of need based on superficial reasonings.
Well,
if somebody
the
actually
government
needs
isn't
money,
capable
that's
of
a different
accurately
story.
judging what someone needs. So they can only come up with superficial points. Or they can treat everyone equally.
Yeah.
Because true equity is impossible with limited resources.
One of the things the courts pointed out is that they didn't prove that there was any disadvantage to these groups, and that that their aid would solve any problems in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Said it was just a random racist choice.
And it is. Because all equity, as their talking point is a justification to be racist.
Used to be their justification to oppress poor people, but now it's their justification to be racist.
Well, even when they oppressed poor people, they were racist with the Democrats were racist in how they set up the system, because their design was to destroy the black family. They destroyed a lot of white families and a lot of Hispanic families as well, but their goal was to destroy the black family.
That had unintended consequences. Thanks, Obama.
That's an old joke.
Well, when you take and you look at the unintended consequences, they were Johnson's unintended consequences. We're going back a ways.
Once again, Josh said that's an old joke. Obama certainly didn't help anything.
No, he didn't. Obama only cared about Obama. He's a lot like Horrible Harris. Horrible Harris
Yeah, he was a better politician.
would do anything for power. Well, that's true. But she'd still do anything for power, and so will he. Recently, the University of Michigan put out a list of words that were forbidden because they're racist or can't use these things like pig. Cockpit.
Then what do they
Trigger
call it?
I have no idea what they call it, but they don't
So-
seem to understand. Picnic comes from French. It's not a. It's not a. They say, well, people used to take and do picnics when they lynched the blacks. No, they've done picnics for hundreds of years.
Now, here's a
A lot
question.
longer than.
What moron decided that lynching only applies to one group of people? When did that notion come about?
That's some of the altered
Democrat-
history that they started throwing around when the 1619 project came around.
Because
Were they trying to say, well, America didn't come into existence until 1690?
Because I hate to break it to you people, but lynching has been around since Cain murdered Abel.
Well,
the Wild West was kind
basically,
of
lynching is
renowned
just
for
taking the law in your own
lynching
hands.
a lot of people.
In fact,
Yeah.
the crucifixion
Oh.
of Christ was a lynching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. In fact, there have been people lynched across for centuries upon centuries upon centuries, and it didn't matter what color they were.
Yeah.
Even here in the United States, it wasn't exclusively black because cattle rustlers were lynched.
Yeah. A lot of Irish were lynched too. A lot of Chinese were lynched.
Yeah.
Basically, well, actually, on top of that, the witch trials were a lynching. A witch hunt is by definition a lynching.
Mm-hmm. And they were all white in the United States, except for Tituba, and she got off. Because she confessed.
She confessed to being a witch, so they let her off?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's-
the Puritans
It's
had
a bit
a
unusual.
particular way about them.
See, if you took and admitted to being a witch, you forfeited all your property, you couldn't hold office, and you expelled from any position of standing in the society. But if you didn't confess, then they would torture you
Until you confessed.
until you confessed. And if you didn't confess under torture, they hung you for being a witch. So you were guilty as far as they were concerned, no matter what.
You were guilty until proven guilty, yeah.
Yeah.
My respect goes
And
out to that
if
man
you
who refused to give in more weight.
oh, the guy who was pressed and died from pressing, yeah. Um,
Yeah, he
the,
was in a real
if you
squeeze.
didn't confess, then they felt you. If you confessed, they considered you, especially if you confessed without being tortured, you were repentant and therefore were salvageable.
Except that you'd never get your land back, and you'd never be able to hold office.
And she didn't own any land in the first place.
So there's really no loss
She had
for
nothing
her.
to lose. No.
Other than a little bit of dignity, maybe some pride.
Not even that if she actually was a witch.
Fair.
Well, out of all the people who were tried for witchcraft in the Salem witch trials, Tituba was probably the only one that actually might have been a witch. And she got off.
The rest were mostly just political rivals of their accusers' families.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with lynchings, you have like the vigilance squad of San Francisco in the 1800s that brought law and order to San Francisco. You've got the a various vigilance squads throughout the West and Southwest.
Vigilantes, if you will.
They were yes, they were all vigilante, and they were almost always is hanging people because they believed they did a crime, but they hung them without a trial. And with our current and oh, and societal collapse, it's very possible we might end up back in that kind of a judicial system again,
Well, with the
because we're law.
unless the police recover, it's inevitable.
Well, you got two major things. There's the police. People are quitting the police forces in droves. They're defunding the police forces in major cities, and people don't trust the court system anymore because the courts are politicized.
Now, here's a question. How long before people figure out that dressing up in brightly colored suits as a vigilante is a bad idea?
Who's dressing up in brightly colored suits?
No one yet. Emphasis on yet. We have had superheroes too long for me to believe that someone isn't that stupid.
Oh no, that's true. Superheroes in comics are vigilantes, and it's pointed out a lot in Spider-Man.
Yeah? J. Jonah Jameson is the best character in Spider-Man, by the way. I will broker no argument.
But I don't know. He's a journalist.
Yes, but he's a journalist with integrity who, although makes many
Yeah,
mistakes
tell
Yeah.
me.
throughout the series, he always owns up to his mistakes.
Except for Scorpion.
No, he owned up to that
Never owned
mistake.
up to that.
He didn't see he didn't see through the full consequences of owning up to that mistake, but he never denied it. He never tried to run away from that fact of what he did.
Which makes him totally opposite of journalists today.
Yeah.
It has been pointed out that uh, in the major media outlets today, the so-called journalists, they will take and present information without any evidence, without any proof, and then when it is pointed out they're wrong, they refuse to retract it.
Now, J. Jonah Jameson got around that by mostly publicizing opinion pieces.
That is how you get around that.
they right now there's a major news group that's being sued by Veritas that they tried to get it thrown out of court saying it was an opinion piece, and then the same write-up stated that the people who wrote it were journalists that don't do opinion pieces.
Shot themselves in the foot there.
Yeah, it's CNN if I remember right. And Project Veritas has a very good track record when it comes to suing the media.
It's practically
Do
their
you know
only
what
job at this point.
Bi- you know what Biden's court or success rate has been since being in office for the government?
What?
0%. They haven't won a single case
Yikes.
of anything they've tried. And now they're trying to go after Georgia for trying to stop corruption in their election process by passing new laws, by saying that the new laws are racist because they insist that you have identification to verify you are who you say you are, and they're out to stop the ability of people taking and doing mass mailings, stopping them from being able to just pick up, having one person gather up thousands of ballots and turning them in, and other such.
I find the suggestion that people cannot get identification because of their skin color to be deeply and horrendously racist.
It is. We require people to take and have ID to buy alcohol. We require them to have ID to smoke cigarettes. Require them to have ID
To
in
purchase a
order to
gun,
take and purchase a gun,
to get a
and
job,
that's a constitutional right. You have to have ID to get a job.
to join the
You've got to
military.
have ID to join the military. You have to have ID in order to take and go in to the Democrat National Convention. You have to have ID to go to the Republican National Convention. You have to have ID if you're going to go into a lot of congressmen's office.
You have to have ID to watch a rated R movie.
Yeah, yeah, you do.
And yet they're saying that they can't have ID because they can't get ID to go to vote. That's nonsense. All they're trying to do is make it to where illegal aliens can vote
Yeah.
and dead people.
In related news, Arizona has finished its audit and is expecting a report by July.
Yes, and the Biden judicial department, the Justice Department, is filing charges against Arizona
Of course
for
they are.
doing the audit.
How dare they do what they're allowed to do? What's wrong with them?
I don't think they seem to realize that doing the audit and finding nothing is good. Doing the audit
Assuming they
and finding
They
something
find
is
nothing, but they think
also
they'll find something.
good. The only one who
Not for
stands to
Biden, it's
gain from
not.
not doing the audit, the only one who stands to gain from not doing the audit, is someone who made office illegally.
Mhm. Which tells
Huh,
you
it's
why
almost like he
Biden's fighting
knows
it.
it.
They obviously don't believe that the audit is going to reflect kindly upon them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why attack it so much?
Now,
They should be supporting it.
if anything, if the audit comes back with findings not in your favor, appeal to audit the audit. Make sure the audit was run without corruption. Yeah, it's a bit Ouroboros snake eating its tail, but that's how you do things properly.
Well, I agree, but they clearly know that they're. Well, they claim, oh, there was no evidence of corruption. But we know for a fact that they have it on video of campaign people in Georgia stuffing the ballot box. So, they can't, after they sent the witnesses out. So it's obvious that corruption was involved in this election. And because of that, because of coming out and saying what I just said, Giuliani has had his law license
Yeah.
revoked.
Though, admittedly, Giuliani has done some very questionable stuff. But that
Yes,
needs to go
he
through due
has,
process, through the
but
proper investigative channels, and they didn't do that when they revoked his license.
they didn't go through the proper channels, and also, in according to the way the laws are set up, a lawyer is not what he says in defense of his client is not supposed to be able to be held against him.
Well,
And yet they
there is
are.
an easy solution to this. Abolish the bar.
Yeah,
They tried that in the 20s, didn't work.
Barnes would agree with you on that.
We're gonna have a bunch of outlaw attorneys telling everyone what to do.
If you took and did away with licensing for attorney,
Like
it
like
has been
America
argued
had for
that
most of its history.
yeah, then for one, they'd be easier to practice as a lawyer, but also they wouldn't get all this money they keep having to fork in every year. Kim gave up her a license because she didn't want to keep paying them money when she wasn't practicing.
It almost sounds like a criminal organization, doesn't it? Pay us your dues,
Yes.
It almost
or
sounds like
someone will
a,
Yes,
knock
it
on your
does.
door.
which sounds an awful lot like a union.
Yeah, it does. It does
Well,
sound a lot like a union.
The interesting thing is that the unions have always been corrupt,
Yeah.
and the unions have always been communist, and the unions have always been run by criminal organizations. So is it surprising that the law association are basically a big union, so they're probably run by the mob too?
Well, think about it. Unions are based on the old guild concept. And the point of guilds wasn't to improve the trade. The point of guilds was to protect the trade. By eliminating competition and keeping those you don't want out.
Recently,
they've
to
been
enforce
thugs from the
monopoly.
beginning. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, which is illegal under U.S. law. It violates trust law. But recently, one of the southern states, I think it was North Carolina, but I'm not positive on that one. So don't hold me to that. Has recently passed a law stating that you cannot discuss engineering unless you're a licensed engineer.
You can't
No, they
discuss
didn't pass that law.
engineering.
That was decided by the engineering board. It wasn't law.
They've been having people taken and getting ticketed and charged for it.
Yeah, because it's the engineering board that does that. Not because it's actually legal.
The police, there's no way to be ticketed by the police for something unless unless it's a law.
Well, it's criminal anyway. What they're doing.
Well, so are
But
toll roads, but that doesn't stop
it's
people
being
from doing it. It's by definition highway robbery.
yeah.
I mean, Rome. This is an actual true story. Rome was started by by people who built a bridge across a river in Italy, and charged people at sword point for their ability to cross said bridge. They were highway bandits that built a city off of the money they collected from extorting people. This is not
Well,
a
I
new
mean, they
concept.
own the bridge. They do have a right to say who can and can't use their bridge.
Not really.
Yeah, if it's a private bridge, it's
Yeah,
their
they
bridge.
do.
They do with it what they want.
Now, if it's a public bridge, no, they wouldn't.
It
But if it's a
wasn't their
private bridge,
property to
yes.
build on.
See, oh. Now, when it comes to
Well, not that.
toll roads, toll roads is just a different form of taxation.
Yeah. But I incline toward the taxation is theft mindset anyway.
Now, when it comes to the engineering, they're being taken to court because of violating a retired engineer's First Amendment rights.
Oh, by the way, Josh, you talking about taxation as theft reminded me of something.
What's that?
Let's all have a moment of silence in memory of the viral software creator John McAfee. Alright, that's long enough. Yes, I called it viral software for a reason.
Yeah, it is a virus. But most antivirus software functions like a virus because it has to monitor
Yes,
certain things
but
that only a
his was
virus can touch.
ridiculous.
But
His
McAfee
was
was
absolutely
McAfee, whatever you want to
ridiculous.
pronounce it as, was particularly egregious. It was worse than most
It's given us
viruses
so
you
many
could-
Think
headaches
about
over
it.
the years.
It has been argued that if this engineering lawsuit wins for violating the First Amendment, then the AMA, the the
APA.
international the psycho
That's the APA.
okay the APA, the bar association, even the all could be sued for the same thing
Mm-hmm. Because it sets precedent.
because it sets precedent,
And they all want to stifle
which
free
would
speech,
take
so.
in. They all want to stifle free speech. You can't practice law without a law license. So they take and are limiting this free speech of those who would.
Which, of course,
You
means
can't
since this is
practice
going to
medicine.
court, it's going to get shot down immediately.
Probably, but it may not.
It's against the court's vested interest. Of
All
course,
depends
the
on the
court is going to
judge.
shut it down. I don't, for the life of me, believe that some random court that you're going to isn't corrupt. We already know the Supreme Court's corrupt. Of course, it goes all the way down.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I probably
See
just made an
how my
enemy out of a
cousin
lot of our family
thinks about
members.
that. I can think of 3 that would
Remember,
probably
you've
be
got,
very offended.
you've got one who's a judge and 2 who are trying.
Yep, 1 who is a judge and 2 that are trying. Yes. So I'm sure you just offended our family.
I've
Uh,
never been on good
they'll
terms with
likely
Kim's
never
side of the
see this.
family.
Not Kim.
Oh no, this isn't Kim's
We're
side of
talking
the
the
family.
other side.
Aren't they her sisters?
No.
No.
No, her
No.
sister's.
The other side.
It's my mother's side of the family.
Oh. The side that has nothing to do with us for obvious reasons.
They've started. This particular group has tried to take and restore relations with us.
They didn't try very hard. Let's be honest.
They're practically strangers to me anyway. In fact, I'd go as far as to say they are strangers to me, so I don't really care about hurting their feelings.
Well, their mother has already volunteered, or the judge, to take you boys out deep sea fishing if you go down to Corpus.
That's a lot of money to go down to Corpus.
Now, on a side note, I do not believe that every single judge and every single lawyer is corrupt. I do, however, believe that every single court is corrupt. That's not the same thing.
Well, I will go so far as to say that I believe that most juries are ignorant.
Well, yeah, that's the nature of the jury system. Whenever you're grabbing
And I
seven random
believe
people,
that
7 to 9 random people that have no knowledge about the circumstances and no background check, or at least no reasonable background check, they're going to be ignorant of law.
and I would argue that a large portion of a large portion of lawyers and a large portion of judges don't know the law.
Yeah.
Well, there's one of my professors in college was a death row defense attorney, and he said you'd be astonished at how many judges rely on the lawyers to tell them the case law.
Yeah.
Because they don't feel like doing the homework themselves.
Well, there's that, and the fact that depending on where you are in the level of things, you're elected, or you're either appointed or elected. And if you're an elected judge, you don't have to know anything about law. I know
Not
a
a thing.
judge in East Texas right now that was elected circuit court judge that has never been to law school, never had a law license. Has he was a farmer and dealt with lumber. And pretty good mechanic,
And
but
ironically, that probably makes him a better judge than most normal judges.
oh, he might be.
Yeah, it gets him out of the law system.
I'm not.
Gets him
I'm
out of
not
the echo
saying he's a
chamber.
bad judge. I'm not saying he's a bad judge, but I can assure you that he's taking and determining the cases more from common sense than he is from law.
Yeah, and he didn't get his position through a background in law, which was your point.
Yes, that's my point. Now, I actually have relatives that have a strong background in law and became a judge,
Yeah.
and are trying to become judges. But as most lawyers will tell you, is that it's impossible for any one person to know the law because the law is too complex anymore.
Yeah. That, and they never get rid of old laws that don't mean anything anymore.
But there's that true, too. So you've got all these laws that no longer have any bearing, and you've got other laws that are unenforceable that are being passed.
Yeah.
And it's just totally ludicrous. It's like in one state, it is illegal to drive down the road without somebody walking in front of your car 20 feet ahead of it, waving a red lantern.
I would like to see a time in history where that was ever enforced. Past, sure.
That was
Enforced
for
is completely different.
it. The whole point was so that these newfangled horseless carriages wouldn't scare the horses.
The way to do that is to get the horses used to them. Keep them around them for a bit.
There's one. There's one southern state that it's still on the books that you cannot take your clothes off in a hotel room.
That was back when hotel rooms were primarily one room for a lot of people, wasn't it?
Probably. And I'm sure that was also back when hotels didn't have showers and bathrooms.
Yeah.
So the very notion of going in and taking a bath did not occur to them in your hotel room.
Nowadays, we've got roach motels with
But
better accommodations.
then yes,
Who would have thought to
nowadays
make a
we've got
hotel inside of a roach?
a Supreme Court that won't even look at a law that the Congress passed that is obviously unconstitutional because they're afraid they're going to that of the political backlash and the lunatic Pelosi's standing up there. The Supreme Court has upheld Obamacare. We now know that it's constitutional.
That's
No,
not what they said at
didn't
all.
look at it.
No.
What they said was, we're not looking at it. We're not giving you standing.
Whatever that means.
It means that you have no right to bring it before this
No,
court for us to
that's
see
not
it.
the point. That's not the point.
It's
point is,
the
standing's
equivalent of
not a
saying no
thing.
comment
Not
to the
really.
paparazzi.
But
Yes, but see,
saying they have no standing
Robert's
is
correct,
not
though. It is
legally
not
a
legal.
thing.
That's something the
It
courts
was
invented.
invented so that they could cherry pick what cases they do and don't take.
And so they can avoid hot potato, well,
And if you decided to
cases.
cherry pick this episode over any other video on YouTube, well, we thank you. and and if you liked it, you can go ahead and hit the like button as well as the subscribe button, and even leave a friendly comment down in the comment section below, or an unfriendly comment down in this comment section below. How did you close it last time? I don't remember. It's been a little bit.
I just said bye.
He
and
just
stopped
cut it
recording.
off.
Bye.